is the Amy Dimboski Show on the Talk of the Valley, KVNT, 1020 AM and 92.5 FM, and live online at 1020kvnt.com. If you want to join the conversation, call 357-5868. That's 357-5868. Now, here's Amy Dimboski.
Welcome back to the Amy Dimboski Show here on KVNT. It's 35 degrees out here in the mighty Matsu. It's a gorgeous day, and it's only getting better because my friend Joe Miller is on the phone. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Amy. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I am so excited that you agreed to call us because we need a Photo Friend segment. We went through the Trump executive order, and we actually read a good portion of it on the air. And to me, when we're talking about the executive order, it's on immigration. And I did not see this rampant religious or, Muslim ban that everybody's talking about. To me, it looked like, the president taking his right to put a pause on immigration from terrorist-known countries and say, listen, we're going to standardize our procedure. We're going to review our procedure. But we're also going to make the procedure more transparent so Americans know what, in fact, is happening. But throughout this process, there were so many opportunities, whether it's the Homeland Security Secretary or others, to make exemptions for people coming into the country. So what is all the hubbub about with this executive order?
It really is politically motivated. There's no question about it. I mean, there's been over 125 years of jurisprudence that has said quite clearly the president has authority, especially where Congress has delegated it. In fact, they call it plenary authority. Some have called it the zenith of the president's power when the legislature, the Congress, which has the right to enact laws relating to immigration, relating to illegal aliens, when they grant that or when it's delegated to the president to execute through statute, the president may act. And really, it's up to his discretion as to how he implements. And the interesting thing about this case, I actually helped draft a brief, an amicus brief before the Ninth Circuit, which talked about this. And that is that there have been presidents before Trump that have done the same sort of thing. You had the president, for example, President Reagan. There was a ban for certain Cubans. There was a ban under Carter for Iranians. And there's a list of 4 or 5 other cases where presidents have banned certain classes of people. In fact, although we didn't say it in the brief, I believe that it is appropriate, or not, I shouldn't say appropriate, but if the president deems it appropriate, he could actually enact an Islamic ban if he so desired. The power is so broad, and of course, one of the other facts that a lot of people ignore, one of the legal facts, is that folk that are not in the country, aliens that have not actually stepped foot in the country, aren't entitled to constitutional rights. So the idea that there could be a First Amendment violation, for example, for banning certain classes of people based upon a religion that the president deems is a threat to the country is actually something which is permissible under the law. Of course, the Ninth Circuit says differently because I believe they have ideological motivation as to actually trying to interpret and apply the Constitution and the statute that was before them.
Well, and that goes to 2 points that we had. Point number 1 is when we saw the comments coming out of the Ninth Circuit, they were really justifying if the president really had a foundation, what were his motivations in this? And I don't see in the law where they have the right to question that, number 1. But number 2, the questions coming from our callers, specifically Jim was calling in last week, and he was saying, who in fact really does get constitutional protections? And my very quick, Google search, I went on Cornell's university page, and I was reading some of their decisions, and I read the 14th Amendment, and then I read some Supreme Court cases, and it seems to me when an illegal is in the country and they're prosecuted, they get constitutional protections through the judicial system. But once they've served their time, it doesn't mean they get to stay here. But I couldn't go any further than that. So the questions people were asking is like, who really does get constitutional protection?
So there's a number of cases that have established historically that if you're an alien that has not stepped foot in the country, you don't have constitutional protections. I mean, it's just black and white. And so the concept that somebody that wants to come here is somehow entitled to the constitutional protections of citizens of this country is just, it's unprecedented in the law. It just doesn't happen. Now, they've kind of tried to pussyfoot around this thing in the Ninth Circuit case by saying, oh, well, we're a state that has universities that have an interest in these aliens coming over here. So we have standing because we're adversely affected. And in fact, there have been some federal cases involving, for example, marriage, where an American citizen is married to an alien that hasn't come into the country, where the court has granted standing to somebody like that. But ultimately, the courts decided against those individuals, saying that the president, with respect to these aliens that haven't come into the country, has the right to determine, based upon the delegation from Congress, the qualifications and the limitations on coming into the country. But as far as those individuals themselves that haven't stepped foot in the country, they don't have constitutional rights. Now, once they're here, once there's an alien that's in country, there have been cases that establish that due process rights attend, that, if they go into court, that they're entitled to due process protections. But as far as those that haven't come in, and that's the class of people that we're dealing with right now, they're not entitled to constitutional protections. It's that clear.
Oh, wow. See, that just makes it easy for me, because I wasn't I could read what I specifically saw from a law university, but I wasn't about to go any further because I'm not a lawyer. So I wanted to make sure we had somebody who knew. What is the status of the case right now?
So there was one unnamed judge of the Ninth Circuit that demanded an en banc response to this decision, and that indicates that at least one judge of the 11th on the Ninth Circuit is pretty torqued about this decision. There are a number of very interesting facets about this. I mean, let's just go to the decision of the tribunal. Now, the Ninth Circuit, for the non-lawyers out there, it's a little confusing. There are actually 11 judges that sit on it, and generally when they sit on cases, they pick 3. It's supposed to be a random selection process. They decide the case. And then if there's a vote of the panel to actually hear the case, there can be an en banc decision where all the judges come together and they make a determination, and they may second guess the tribunal. In this case, you've had a single judge that's demanded that this be reviewed. Whether or not there's an en banc review depends on a vote. That hasn't happened yet, but this is a very unusual move of one judge to demand this, and it reflects that he or she is very upset about the decision, recognizing that it's unprecedented, that it's an activist decision. Now, one of the things that people can anchor to in showing that this is an unprecedented, activist, just outrageous decision is that there was another court, a district court in Massachusetts, of all places, that heard the same sort of case just several weeks ago. And that court said, hey, it's very clear in the law. There are over 100 years of jurisprudence where the federal courts have said that the president's power in this area is plenary. We cannot second guess it. And, of course, dismissed the objection, did not issue a restraining order. The Ninth Circuit, of course, a little bit different, I guess, even further left than the Massachusetts courts. And the district court judge, of course, decides that he's all powerful. And not only does he say, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order, he also says, on top of that, I'm applying it nationwide, even though this other district court judge in Massachusetts said that this has no merit. I mean, it just shows how unhinged some of these judges are. The Ninth Circuit, of course, is unhinged as well. And there really needs to be a restraining, because what we're seeing is a level of activism that's unprecedented. We saw it with the homosexual marriage decision. The federal courts as a whole upset well over 3/4 of state laws on gay marriage. You now have this transgendered just insanity taking over the nation that's being driven by the federal courts. It's all undemocratic. It's all driven by judges who aren't elected, that have lifetime tenure, and it's time to do something about it. Regrettably, the only entity that can do anything about it is the Congress. And the Congress has not shown backbone yet to start impeaching these people that are not standing by the Constitution, or just basically making up things as they go along to match their twisted leftist ideology. That, by the way, doesn't match the American people.
Yeah, it's amazing you said that, because we said last week that's what needs to start happening in some of these judges. Because, listen, I'm a lay person. I'm not a lawyer, but I could read the Constitution and I could read the 1952 Immigration Act, and it was clear to me. There's no clearer way you could say the president has this authority. All right, Joe, we're going to come up against the break really quick, but one more quick question for you. I saw an article on Fox, and it was a Fox News affiliate, but they were talking about the option maybe to pull this into a FISA court, which most people have never heard of. And they have authority over national security issues, which the ACLU wouldn't even have standing in. What are your thoughts of that potentially happening? We only have about 2 minutes.
I don't like the FISA courts. Now, I understand the national security interest in creating them, but their expansion of jurisdiction has been troubling to me. Their decisions, they're all in secret. Any court that basically takes away transparency, except for the most exceptional cases, I believe, should not have. This is not that type of case, Amy. It really is not.
Okay. This will go to the Supreme Court?
It probably will. I'm concerned because the court, with the 4-4 split, has shown an activist bent. So, but the answer to this, of course, is that Trump just issues more executive orders. The next one ought to be more limiting than the one he just issued.
Right.
I mean, and then he keeps on doing it. Or he just refuses to implement the unconstitutional decision of the court and dares them to hold them in contempt and then says, hey, how are you going to enforce this unconstitutional order? I mean, that's how it used to be. The president used to have the capacity to say this is unconstitutional, just like the legislature did. But now we become a nation of what's called judicial supremacy, which is not what the Constitution was intended to do. It wasn't what the nation was founded on, but we really are moving into this era of the tyranny of the black robe, and it's something that's got to change.
Thank you so much. We're talking with Joe Miller. We're talking about the immigration executive order and what it might mean. We'll be right back.